Welcome to my Channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. The envelope in my mailbox shouldn't have existed. Not because it was strange to get mail on a Tuesday, not because it had no return address, but because the handwriting on the front belonged to my grandmother who'd been dead for 3 years. I stood there on my porch in Cedar Falls, Iowa, staring at those familiar loops and curves. The way she always made her capital letters too big, the slight tremor in the lines from her arthritis. My hands shook as I picked it up, feeling the weight of impossibility in my fingers. If you're listening to this right now, lying in bed, maybe with the lights dimmed, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to tell you changed everything I thought I knew about death, about grief, about the thin line between our world and whatever comes after. And before this story ends, you'll never look at your mailman the same way again. But first, hit that subscribe button, because after you hear this, you're going to have questions. Questions I'm still trying to answer myself. Our story begins now. I should probably tell you my name. It's Sarah Chen, 32 years old, elementary school teacher, and until last month I thought I was a rational person. I lived alone in a modest 2-story house on Maple Street, the kind of neighborhood where everyone waves but nobody really talks, where the biggest excitement is when someone forgets to bring their trash cans in. That Tuesday started like any other. Coffee at 6:30, shower at 7, out the door by 7:45. But when I got home that afternoon, there it was, mixed in with the usual pile of bills and grocery store circulars. A cream-colored envelope, my name written in blue ink, in handwriting that made my chest tight. I dropped my teaching bag, picked up the envelope with both hands, turned it over. No return address, no stamp, which meant someone had placed it directly in my mailbox. My grandmother, Nana Rose we called her, had lived with us when I was young, taught me to bake snickerdoodles, to knit scarves that were always too long, to see magic in ordinary things. When she died, peacefully in her sleep at 91, I thought I'd made my peace with it. But seeing her handwriting, I tore open the envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper. The same cream color, the same blue ink. My dearest Sarah, I know this must be quite a shock. Please don't be frightened. There are things I need to tell you, things I couldn't say before. The mailman will explain if you ask him. I've missed you terribly. All my love, Nana Rose. P.S. Remember what I taught you about snickerdoodles. The secret ingredient matters now more than ever. I read it 3 times. 4. The paper felt real, smelled faintly of lavender, just like her bedroom used to. But this was impossible. Dead people don't write letters. Dead people don't. The doorbell rang. I jumped, nearly dropped the letter. Through the peephole, I saw him, our mailman, Mr. Garrett, according to the name tag on his uniform. I'd seen him 100 times before. Mid-50s, graying beard, always whistling old jazz tunes. But I'd never really looked at him, not really. I opened the door. Afternoon, Miss Chen. His voice was gravelly, tired. Thought you might have questions. This letter. I held it up, my hand trembled. How? He glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. Mind if I come in? This isn't a conversation for doorsteps. I should have said no, should have closed the door, called the police maybe. But something in his eyes, a sadness, a weight, made me step aside. He walked into my living room like he'd been there before, sat in the armchair by the window. I perched on the edge of my couch, still clutching the letter. I've been delivering mail for 37 years, he began. Regular mail for 36, the other kind for about 1. The other kind? He rubbed his face, sighed. Letters from the dead, Miss Chen. I don't know how. I don't know why, but every few weeks they show up in my bag. Always for someone on my route. Always someone who needs to hear what's written inside. I laughed. It came out sharp, hysterical. This is insane. You're telling me you're some kind of supernatural postman? I'm telling you what I know. He leaned forward. Last year, around Halloween, I found the first one. Thought it was a prank. The envelope was cold, like it had been sitting in a freezer, but I delivered it anyway, to Mrs. Morrison over on Oak Street. From her son, who'd died in Afghanistan 5 years prior. My mouth went dry. What did it say? Don't know. That's between the dead and the living. But Mrs. Morrison, she came to me the next day, crying, thanking me. Said her son had told her where to find his journal, the one the army couldn't locate. Had his poems in it, his drawings. Gave her the closure she'd been searching for. I looked down at Nana's letter. The postscript about snickerdoodles. What secret ingredient? She'd always said it was love. Just love. There have been 12 more since then, Mr. Garrett continued. A father apologizing to his daughter, a wife explaining why she left that insurance policy, a brother revealing the location of a family heirloom everyone thought was lost, and now, your grandmother. But how do you know they're real? Maybe someone's playing an elaborate... He reached into his mailbag, pulled out a manila folder, handed it to me. Inside were photocopies, handwriting samples, death certificates. I recognized some of the names. The Johnsons from 2 streets over, Miss Patricia from the library, all dead. All had apparently sent letters after. I've compared the handwriting, he said quietly. Had a friend at the police department run analysis. They match, every single one. My hands shook as I closed the folder. Why are you showing me this? Because you're going to get more. The room seemed to tilt. More? It's always the same pattern. Once someone receives the first letter, more follow. Usually 3 or 4, sometimes as many as 7. They come every few days, always with something the person needs to know. And then, he paused, looked out the window. They stop. Why? Why do they stop? Because by then, the message has been delivered. Whatever the dead needed to say, it's been said. I stood up, paced to the window. Outside, everything looked normal. Kids riding bikes, Mrs. Patterson walking her ancient poodle, the sun starting its lazy descent toward evening. How could the world look so ordinary when nothing made sense anymore? The secret ingredient, I said suddenly. In the snickerdoodles, Nana always said it was love, but Mr. Garrett stood. That's for you to figure out, Miss Chen. I just deliver the mail. He walked to the door, paused. One more thing, don't tell too many people. Most folks, they won't believe you. And the ones who do, he shrugged. Sometimes belief can be more dangerous than doubt. After he left, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the letter. Then I did the only thing that made sense. I started baking snickerdoodles. I followed Nana's recipe exactly. Butter, sugar, eggs, cinnamon. But when I got to the end, I hesitated. She'd always made a big show of adding her secret ingredient, cupping her hands around the bowl so I couldn't see, whispering words I couldn't hear. I added vanilla, a little extra cinnamon, even tried adding a pinch of nutmeg, but the cookies tasted wrong, flat, ordinary. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nana's handwriting, heard her voice, felt like she was just in the next room, waiting to tell me something important. The next letter came 3 days later. This time, I was waiting. I'd taken a sick day, sat by the window from sunrise on. Mr. Garrett's truck rounded the corner at 217. I was at the mailbox before he'd even parked. He didn't say anything, just handed me the envelope, same cream color, same blue ink, and drove away. Back inside, I made myself breathe slowly before opening it. Dearest Sarah, you tried to make the cookies, didn't you? I can feel it somehow, like I'm watching through a foggy window. Don't worry, you'll understand soon. Do you remember the summer you turned 10? When you stayed with me for 3 weeks while your parents sorted through their troubles? You were so sad, so quiet, until we found that injured cardinal in the garden. You insisted we save it. Built that shoebox hospital. Fed it breadcrumbs soaked in water. And when it died anyway, you cried for hours. I told you then that loving something doesn't mean it stays forever. It means it matters forever. The bird is buried under the oak tree in my old backyard, along with something else, something you need now. Love always. Nana Rose, my throat burned. I did remember that summer, the way the house felt too quiet. How Nana let me sleep in her bed when the thunderstorms came. How she never asked why I was really there. Her old house was only 20 minutes away. New family lived there now, the Nguyens. They'd bought it after we sold it to pay for her care facility. But they were nice people. Maybe they'd let me. I grabbed my keys. The drive felt both endless and too quick. Every red light gave me time to think about how crazy this was. Following instructions from a dead woman. Digging in someone else's yard. But I kept going. Mrs. Nguyen answered the door, recognized me immediately. "Sarah, how wonderful. Come in, I explained, haltingly, that I needed to look for something in the backyard. Something my grandmother might have buried. I expected questions, skepticism. Instead, she smiled. Of course, your grandmother, she was special. Sometimes I still smell her lavender perfume in the hallway." The oak tree looked smaller than I remembered, but the grass beneath it was slightly sunken, like the earth remembered what lay beneath. I'd brought a small garden spade, started digging carefully. 6 inches down, I hit something hard. A tin box, the kind people used to keep recipes in. Rusty now, difficult to open. Inside, the tiny skeleton of a bird wrapped in fabric I recognized. A handkerchief Nana had embroidered with roses. And beneath that, another envelope. This one, plastic wrapped, protected. I sat right there in the dirt to read it. "Sarah, if you're reading this, then Mr. Garrett found you." Good, I've been watching him, the way the dead do. He's a good man, carrying a heavy burden. By now, you're wondering if you've lost your mind. You haven't. The world has always been stranger than we admit. Death isn't a door that locks behind us. It's more like moving to another room. Sometimes the walls are thin, sometimes we can slip notes under the door, but it takes so much effort. Each letter leaves me weaker, more distant. So I must tell you quickly what you need to know. First, you're not alone. There are others who've received letters. Find them. They meet on Thursdays. Second, the secret ingredient was never in the cookies. It was in the making. In the moment between measuring and mixing, when I would think of everyone I loved. When I would put that love into the dough with my hands. You can't taste love, but you can feel it. And feeling it changes everything. Third, and this is the hardest part, I need you to forgive your mother. What happened that summer wasn't her fault. Your father's leaving broke something in her. She's carried that guilt for 22 years. She needs to know you understand. The next letter will be the last. I'm sorry. I wish we had more time, but the walls are getting thicker. The room I'm in is getting farther away. Remember the cardinal, my darling girl. Love means it matters forever. And as I sat in the Nguyen's backyard and cried, not the pretty tears you see in movies, but the ugly kind that come with sounds you didn't know you could make. Mrs. Nguyen found me there, didn't ask questions. Just brought me tea, sat beside me in the grass, held my hand while I sobbed. She was special, your grandmother, she said finally. The first night we moved in, I found a note she'd left in the kitchen drawer. Take care of this house, it said. It remembers love. I showed her the letter, watched her face change as she read. Thursday meetings, she murmured. I wonder, you know something? She helped me to my feet. There's a grief support group at the community center. Meets Thursday nights. But I've heard rumors that some members have stories about letters, about impossible things. I left with the tin box clutched to my chest, the cardinal's bones rattling softly inside, a sound like whispered secrets. That night, I called my mother. First time in 3 months. We talked around things, as we always did, about work, weather, her new book club. But before hanging up, I said it. I forgive you, Mom, for that summer, for all of it. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, a sound, soft crying. How did you? I never told you, never explained. It doesn't matter. I understand now. Love means it matters forever, even the broken parts. We talked for 2 more hours, really talked, about Dad leaving, about how she'd sent me to Nana because she was afraid she might hurt me with her sadness, about all the years we'd lost to silence. When we finally hung up, I felt lighter, like something heavy had been lifted from my chest. The third letter came the very next day. Mr. Garrett didn't even slow down this time, just reached out his truck window, handed me the envelope as he passed, like we'd developed our own strange rhythm. I opened it, standing right there at the mailbox. Couldn't wait anymore. My last letter, dear one. How strange to write those words. Tonight is Thursday. Go to the community center, room 12B. Tell them you're Rose's granddaughter. They'll understand. What you'll learn there will frighten you. But remember, fear and wonder are siblings. They both mean you're paying attention. I'm fading now, can barely hold the pen. But before I go, one more story. When you were 5, you asked me what happens when we die. I told you we become stars. You said that was silly. There were too many stars and not enough people. So I said maybe we become the space between stars, the dark that holds the light. You thought about that for the longest time. Then you said, so we're always there, just harder to see. You were right then, you're right now. Look for me in the spaces between, in the pause before you speak, in the moment before sleep, in the love that outlasts the leaving. Goodbye, my darling girl. Take care of the others. All my love, always, Nana Rose. The handwriting was shaky on this one. Some words barely legible, like she really was fading as she wrote. That evening, I drove to the community center. Had to circle the parking lot twice before working up the courage to go in. Room 12B was in the basement, down a hallway that smelled like old coffee and industrial cleaner. I heard voices before I reached the door, soft, careful, the way people talk around fragile things. I knocked, the voices stopped. Footsteps. Then the door opened to reveal a woman about my mother's age. Gray-streaked hair, kind eyes, familiar face. You're Sarah Chen, she said, not a question. How did you? Rose told me you'd come, eventually. She stepped aside. I'm Diana Morrison. Mr. Garrett told you about my son. The room was smaller than I expected. Folding chairs in a circle. 6 people besides Diana, all watching me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Everyone, Diana said. This is Rose's granddaughter. She's one of us now. One of us? Letter receivers? The Thursday people, as I'd come to think of them. I sat in the empty chair they'd apparently been saving. looked around the circle, recognized a few faces. Mr. Johnson from 2 streets over, Patricia from the library, others I'd seen around town but never really noticed. "We should start with the rules," Diana said. "First, we don't talk about this outside this room. Second, we don't seek out letters. They come when they come. Third," she paused, "we take care of each other, because nobody else will understand." "How long have you been meeting?" I asked. 8 months, since the 3rd letter. We found each other by accident mostly. Word spreads in whispers when impossible things happen. Patricia leaned forward. "My sister sent me 4 letters. Told me where she'd hidden money from her ex-husband. Told me to check on her daughter more. Told me..." Her voice caught. "Told me she was proud of me. Things she never said when she was alive." One by one, they shared their stories. A husband directing his wife to love letters he'd written but never sent. A daughter explaining why she'd made certain choices. A best friend revealing the location of a buried time capsule from childhood. All delivered by Mr. Garrett. All in the handwriting of the dead. "But why?" I asked. "Why these letters? Why us?" Diana shrugged. "We've discussed theories. Maybe there's always been a thin place here, between worlds. Maybe Mr. Garrett is some kind of conductor. Maybe grief creates openings that love can slip through. Or maybe," said a man I didn't recognize, "the dead have always been trying to reach us, and we're just finally listening." We talked until the community center closed. Shared phone numbers. Made plans to meet again the following Thursday. When I left, I felt less alone than I had in years. But in my car, Diana's words echoed. "We take care of each other. Take care of the others," Nana had written. I thought about Mr. Garrett. 37 years of delivering mail. 1 year of carrying impossible messages. What did that do to a person? Knowing what waited in his bag? Seeing the faces when he handed over those cream-colored envelopes. The next morning, I waited for him. Had fresh coffee in a thermos, homemade snickerdoodles in a tin. "Thought you might like these," I said when he pulled up. He looked at the offerings, then at me. "You went to the meeting. Diana told me you never come. That you deliver the letters but won't talk about them." "Talking makes them real," he said quietly. "I prefer to think of them as possibilities. Things that might be true, might not. But you know they are. You've seen the proof." He accepted the coffee, took a small sip. "You know what the hardest part is? It's not the impossible letters. It's the regular mail I deliver to the same houses. Knowing that Mrs. Morrison gets bills she can barely afford. That Patricia's been waiting for a letter from her daughter for 3 years. That the Johnsons' mortgage payment is always late. The dead reach out," he continued, "but the living stay silent. That's what breaks my heart every damn day." I offered him a cookie, watched him bite into it, saw his expression change. "These are..." He paused. "They taste like my grandmother's." "Love," I said. "The secret ingredient is just paying attention while you make them, thinking about who they're for, putting that feeling into the dough." He ate 3 more cookies standing there by his truck. Told me about his grandmother, about growing up in Nebraska, about how he'd started delivering mail because he liked the idea of bringing people good news. "Then email came," he said with a rueful smile. "Now it's mostly bills and ads. Except for the impossible letters. Yeah, except for those." I watched him drive away. Wondered how many more cream-colored envelopes would find their way to my mailbox. Wondered if I'd ever stop hoping for them. That night I made more snickerdoodles. Thought about love while I mixed the dough. About Nana, about my mother, about the Thursday people, about Mr. Garrett carrying his strange burden, about the spaces between stars. 3 weeks passed without another letter. I'd stopped checking the mailbox obsessively. Stopped jumping when I heard Mr. Garrett's truck. The Thursday meetings helped. We'd grown from 7 to 12. Word spreading in that quiet way grief does. Each week brought new stories. Not all about letters from the dead. Sometimes just about the dead themselves. The weight of missing them. The way absence becomes a presence. Then Diana got another letter. From her son. 5 years after the first one. She brought it to the meeting, hands shaking as she read it aloud. "Mom, the space between is getting wider, harder to reach across. But I needed you to know. I can see him, Dad. He's been waiting for you to forgive yourself, just like you waited for me to forgive you. The waiting is almost over. Be ready. Love, Michael." Diana's husband had died 2 years before their son. Heart attack at 53. She'd blamed herself for not seeing the signs, for working late that night, for 1,000 small failures that weren't failures at all. "I don't understand," she said. "Be ready for what?" We didn't have an answer. But 3 days later, Diana had a stroke. Minor, the doctors said. But while she was unconscious, she said she saw them. Her husband, her son, sitting at a kitchen table made of light, waiting. She recovered, but something in her had changed. A piece that hadn't been there before, like she'd gotten a glimpse of the next room and found it wasn't scary at all. "The letters aren't about the dead," she told us at the next meeting. "They're about the living, about what we need to hear so we can let go, so we can be ready for whatever comes next." I thought about that as December turned to January, as snow blanketed Cedar Falls, as I taught my third graders about life cycles, butterflies and frogs, and how change was just another word for growth. Then came the night I couldn't sleep. 3 a.m., the house too quiet. I made tea, sat at my kitchen table, thought about Nana. That's when I heard it. Soft, almost like wind, but rhythmic, like knocking, at my front door at 3 in the morning. I crept to the peephole, heart hammering. Saw nothing, just darkness and swirling snow. The knocking came again, patient, insistent. I opened the door. Mr. Garrett stood there, but different, older somehow. Tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "I'm sorry to come so late," he said, "but this couldn't wait for normal hours." He held out an envelope. Not cream-colored, black. My name written in silver ink, in handwriting I didn't recognize. "This isn't—" I couldn't finish. "No, not from your grandmother. This is different." He rubbed his face. "In 37 years I've gotten 3 of these black envelopes. They don't come from the recently dead. They come from—" He paused. "The ones who've been gone longer. The ones who have something urgent to say." I took the envelope. It was cold. So cold it burned my fingers. "Who?" "Open it inside," he said. "And Sarah? Whatever it says, remember that you have a choice. The dead can send messages, but the living decide what to do with them." He turned and walked back into the snow. No truck, no footprints, like he'd never been there at all. Inside, I set the envelope on my table, stared at it, made more tea, stared some more. Finally, I opened it. The letter inside was short, written in that strange silver ink that seemed to move in the light. "Sarah Chen, you don't know me, but I knew Rose. We met in the space between. She asked me to watch over you, to wait until you were ready. My name is Eleanor Blackwood. I died in Cedar Falls in 1889. I was the first to receive letters from the dead, the first to understand the pattern. The town is built on a threshold, a place where the walls are thin. Every generation, someone becomes the keeper, the one who helps the messages through, who tends the space between. Mr. Garrett's time is ending. He's carried this burden as long as he can. but the threshold needs a new keeper. Someone who understands that love transcends death. That grief is just love with nowhere to go. That the dead still have voices if we're brave enough to listen. Rose said you were ready. That you'd learned the secret ingredient, not just in cookies, but in life. That attention is love. That presence is everything. That the space between stars is what holds the light. If you accept this responsibility, go to the old cemetery. Section 7, Row 12. My grave. Place your hand on the stone and say yes. If you refuse, burn this letter. Another will be chosen. But Rose believed it should be you. The choice, as always, belongs to the living. E.B. I read it 12 times. Felt the weight of it settling into my bones. Keeper of messages, of the threshold between life and death. I thought about Mr. Garrett, how tired he looked, how he'd carried those impossible letters for a year, the toll it must take, knowing what waited in his bag. I thought about the Thursday people, how the letters had saved them, healed them, given them peace. I thought about Nana, how she'd always seen magic in ordinary things, how she'd taught me that love means it matters forever. At dawn, I drove to the cemetery, snow crunching under my boots, breath misting in the cold air. Section 7, Row 12, A Simple Stone. Eleanor Blackwood, 1867 to 1889. She listened. I knelt in the snow, placed my hand on the cold granite. Yes, I said. The world shifted, like a radio tuning to a different frequency. Suddenly, I could feel them, all of them, the dead of Cedar Falls, pressing against the veil, wanting to speak, to reach through, to matter and deeper, older. I felt Eleanor, patient, watchful, relieved. Thank you, her voice whispered through time. The letters will come to you now. You'll know which ones to deliver, which voices need to be heard. Mr. Garrett will help you understand the practical parts, but the rest, trust your heart. Rose raised you well. I stayed there until my knees went numb, until the sun painted the snow pink and gold, until I understood what I'd agreed to. That was 2 months ago. Now I teach during the day, take care of the living, but in the early morning, in the late evening, I sort through the letters that appear on my kitchen table. Cream-colored envelopes filled with love and apology and closure. Mr. Garrett still delivers them, but he smiles more now, knows the burden is shared. The Thursday people still meet. Our circle growing, stories multiplying. The space between getting thinner as more people believe. And sometimes, late at night, I make snickerdoodles. Think about love while I mix the dough, about Nana, about Eleanor, about all the voices that refuse to be silenced by something as small as death. Because love means it matters forever. And in a world where the dead can send letters, where grief creates openings, where an ordinary town sits on an extraordinary threshold. Forever isn't nearly as far away as we think, but here's what haunts me, what keeps me awake some nights, what makes me wonder if I made the right choice. The letters are getting stranger, not just from the recently dead anymore, but from people who've been gone decades, centuries even, and they're not all kind. Some carry warnings. Some reveal secrets that were meant to stay buried. Some speak of things that haven't happened yet. And last week, I got one addressed to me. In handwriting, I recognized immediately. My own. From a future I haven't lived yet. I haven't opened it. It sits in my drawer, waiting. Because once I read it, once I know what my future self needs to tell me, there's no going back. So I'm telling you this story, sharing it with whoever will listen. Because maybe you've gotten a letter too. Maybe you've noticed your mailman looking tired. Maybe you've felt the space between getting thinner. Or maybe you're just lying in bed, listening, wondering if any of this could be real. Here's what I know. The dead speak. Love transcends. And somewhere in Cedar Falls, Iowa, the mail still carries impossible messages. If you ever get one, a cream-colored envelope with no return address, don't be afraid. Open it. Read it. Let the dead have their say. And if you're ever in Cedar Falls on a Thursday night, come find us. Room 12B. We'll save you a chair, because in the end, we're all just trying to matter, to be heard, to leave something behind that says we were here. We loved, we tried. Even death can't stop that. Even death is just another threshold to cross. Sweet dreams. And remember, check your mailbox tomorrow. You never know what might be waiting. The end, or is it? Tell me in the comments. Have you ever received a letter you couldn't explain? Does your mailman look tired? Have you noticed the space between getting thinner? Subscribe for more stories from the threshold, because this is just the beginning. And somewhere tonight, in small towns across America, cream-colored envelopes are being delivered. Maybe one of them is for you. Story number 2. You know that feeling when you walk into someone's house and immediately know something's off? Not wrong exactly, just off. Like when you're watching a movie and the audio is delayed by half a second. Everything looks normal, but your brain screams that something isn't right. That's how I felt the first time I smelled it. Old books, cinnamon, and something else. Something I couldn't name. It hit me like a physical force in that antique shop in Portland, Maine. One second I was browsing vintage postcards, and the next, I was drowning in someone else's life. I saw myself as a child, but not me, a little girl with my eyes but different hair, standing in a kitchen I'd never seen, watching her grandmother roll out cookie dough. The smell of cinnamon filled the air. "Remember, Sarah," the old woman said, "the secret is in the cardamom." My name isn't Sarah. I've never had a grandmother who baked, but I remembered it. God help me. I remembered every detail like it was yesterday. If you're listening to this, if you've ever caught a scent that made you homesick for a place you've never been, then maybe you'll understand what happened next. Maybe you'll believe me. But first, let me ask you something. What would you do if you discovered that memories, real, vivid memories, could leak between people? What if the life you remember isn't entirely your own? Keep listening, please. I need someone to know the truth before it's too late, because the smell is getting stronger. And the memories that come with it, they're getting darker. The story begins now. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, had suggested I try new experiences to help with my anxiety. "Small steps, Emma," she'd said during our last session. "Visit somewhere you've never been. Talk to a stranger. Buy something frivolous." That's how I ended up in Harbor Moon Antiques on that rainy October afternoon. The bell above the door chimed as I entered, and the musty smell of old things wrapped around me like a blanket. It was comforting at first, safe. The shop was exactly what you'd expect. Narrow aisles crammed with forgotten treasures, dust motes dancing in the weak light from the front window. The owner, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled back in a loose bun, looked up from her book and smiled. "Let me know if you need anything, dear." I nodded and began wandering, past shelves of carnival glass, around a rack of vintage coats that smelled like mothballs, through a section of old toys that made me inexplicably sad. Then I reached the back corner where they kept the books. That's when it hit me. The smell came in waves. First, the familiar scent of aging paper and leather bindings, then cinnamon, warm and sweet, but underneath, there was something else. Something that made my skin prickle. The room tilted. My vision blurred. And suddenly, I wasn't me anymore. I was Sarah, 8 years old, standing in a sunny kitchen with checkered curtains. My grandmother, no, Sarah's grandmother, was teaching me to make snickerdoodles. Her hands, spotted with age but still strong, guided mine as we shaped the dough. "The cardamom is our secret," she whispered, winking. "Your mother never did appreciate it. But you understand, don't you, sweet girl?" I could taste the raw dough she let me sneak, could feel the flour on my hands, could hear the radio playing Dean Martin in the background. But none of it was real. None of it was mine. The vision shattered when someone touched my shoulder. "Miss, are you all right?" I was on my knees beside the bookshelf, tears streaming down my face. The shop owner stood over me, concern etched in every line of her face. I'm sorry. The smell." She helped me to my feet, studying me with the eyes that seemed too knowing. "What did you smell, dear?" "Cinnamon, and something else. Like old paper, but different." Her grip on my arm tightened. "Cardamom?" The word sent ice through my veins. "How did you—" "Come with me." She led me to a small office behind the counter, gesturing for me to sit in a worn leather chair. "Tea?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. While she busied herself with an electric kettle, I tried to make sense of what had happened. Hallucinations? A stroke? But it had felt so real, more real than real, if that made sense. "My name is Margaret," she said, handing me a chipped mug. "And I think we need to talk about what just happened to you." The tea smelled like chamomile. Normal, safe. I wrapped my hands around the warmth and waited. "That corner of the shop," Margaret continued, settling into the chair across from me, "has a history. You're not the first person to have an experience there." "Experience?" She sighed. "How do I explain this? Have you ever heard of psychometry?" I shook my head. "It's the idea that objects can hold memories, that sensitive people can touch something and see its history. But what happens in that corner is different, stronger. I didn't touch anything. I just smelled, yes, the cardamom." She leaned forward. "Tell me about Sarah." My hands started shaking. "How do you know about Sarah?" "Because 3 years ago, a young woman named Sarah Chen came into my shop. She spent hours in that corner, touching every book, crying. When I asked her what was wrong, she said she was looking for something that smelled like her grandmother's kitchen. Did she find it?" Margaret's face darkened. "She bought an old cookbook, said it smelled exactly right. 2 weeks later, she was dead." The tea turned to ice in my stomach. "Dead?" "The police called it an accident. She fell down her apartment stairs, but Emma, she knew my name. I hadn't told her my name. Sarah wasn't the first, and she wasn't the last." I set the mug down before I dropped it. "I should go." "Wait." Margaret pulled open a desk drawer and removed a leather journal. "Before you leave, I need you to understand something. What happened to you today, it's not over. The memories you experienced, they'll come back. Stronger each time. And eventually what?" She pushed the journal across the desk. "Read this, then decide if you want to know more." I picked up the journal with trembling fingers. The leather was soft, worn. It smelled like... No, I wouldn't let myself identify the smell. "What is this?" "A record of everyone who's experienced what you did. Everyone who smelled the cardamom and remembered lives that weren't theirs." She stood, suddenly looking older than her years. "Take it home, read it, then come back if you want answers." I clutched the journal to my chest. "Why are you helping me?" "Because 30 years ago, I stood in that corner. I smelled my mother's perfume, rose and sandalwood, and remembered being someone named Catherine. I remembered dying in a fire in 1962. She pulled back her collar, revealing old burn scars on her neck. These appeared the next day. I ran, out of the shop, into the rain, not stopping until I reached my car. The journal felt like it weighed 100 pounds in my hands. I should have thrown it away, should have driven home and forgotten the whole thing. Instead, I opened it to the first page. The handwriting was Margaret's, neat and precise, October 15th, 1994. Today, I learned that memories can kill. I didn't sleep that night. The journal lay open on my kitchen table, its pages filled with impossible stories. Each entry followed the same pattern. Someone visited the shop, smelled something specific, experienced memories that weren't theirs, and then things got worse. Margaret had been meticulous in her record-keeping. Names, dates, what they smelled, whose memories they experienced, and what happened after. David Reeves, 1997. Smelled pipe tobacco and wet wool. Remembered being a man named Franklin who'd drowned in 1943. A week later, David's lungs filled with fluid while he slept. The doctors couldn't explain it. Jennifer Wu, 2001. Smelled lavender and burnt sugar. Became convinced she was a woman named Mary who'd died in a house fire. Jennifer's apartment burned down 2 weeks later. She barely escaped. Thomas Mitchell, 2008, smelled motor oil and leather. Remembered dying in a car crash as someone named Robert. Thomas wrapped his car around a telephone pole on a clear day, no other vehicles involved. And Sarah Chen, 2021, smelled cinnamon and cardamom. Remembered being a girl named Emma who'd fallen downstairs. Emma, my name. My hand shook as I reread that entry. Sarah had remembered being someone named Emma. But I was Emma. I was sitting here alive reading about... The room spun. I gripped the table edge until my knuckles went white. What if I wasn't the first Emma? What if I was just another link in a chain, destined to smell something in that shop and remember being someone else who would then die the way I... No, this was insane. Coincidences, delusions, mass hysteria. But I could still taste that cookie dough, could still feel Sarah's grandmother's hands guiding mine. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You read the journal. We need to talk. M. I didn't remember giving Margaret my number. I texted back, how did you get this? The same way I knew your name. Please, come back tomorrow. Bring the journal. There are things not written in those pages. I stared at my phone until the screen went dark. Outside, rain pelted my windows. The sound made me think of Sarah's grandmother's kitchen, though there'd been no rain in that memory. Memory. Someone else's memory that I remembered as my own. I made coffee and kept reading. The later entries were different. Margaret had started researching, trying to find patterns. She discovered that everyone who'd had an experience in that corner shared certain traits: anxiety disorders, insomnia, a tendency toward what she called emotional porousness, the ability to pick up on others' feelings too easily, like me. She'd also found something else. The memories weren't random. They formed chains. Person A would remember Person B's life. Then Person B, if Margaret could track them down, had remembered Person C, and so on. But the chains didn't go backward infinitely. They all led somewhere, or to someone. The final entry was dated just last week. I think I understand now. The corner isn't cursed. It's not a supernatural hotspot. It's a trap, and we're the bait. I closed the journal and rubbed my eyes. It was 3 a.m. I should try to sleep, pretend none of this had happened. Instead, I found myself Googling Sarah Chen. Her obituary was brief. 28 years old. Graphic designer. Died from injuries sustained in a fall. No mention of strange memories or antique shops, but her Instagram was still active. I scrolled through her posts, looking for... I didn't know what. Evidence that she'd been real. That the Sarah whose memories I'd inherited had actually existed. Then I found it. a photo from 3 weeks before she died. She was in her kitchen, smiling at the camera, holding a plate of cookies. Snickerdoodles. The caption read, "Finally perfected my grandma's recipe. Secret ingredient and all." My throat closed. Those weren't her grandmother's cookies, they were mine. Or rather, they belonged to the Sarah whose memories I'd absorbed. I kept scrolling and found more impossibilities. Posts about childhood memories that I recognized. A scar on her hand from a broken window that I remembered getting, even though my own hand was unmarked. A fear of basements that matched the terror I'd felt in Sarah's memories of her grandmother's cellar. Then I found the post that made me run to the bathroom and throw up. 2 days before she died, Sarah had posted a photo of herself standing at the top of a staircase. The caption, "Keep having dreams about falling downstairs." So weird because I've never fallen in my life. Anyone else ever dream about dying in ways that make no sense? The comments were full of friends joking about stress and suggesting she cut back on caffeine. One comment stood out, posted the day after she died. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I should have warned you." M. Margaret. I washed my face and stared at my reflection. Did I look like Sarah Chen? We had the same brown eyes, but that meant nothing. Half the world had brown eyes. But there was something in the shape of my mouth. The way I tilted my head. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Hello?" Static. Then faintly, a voice I recognized but shouldn't have. "Emmy, is that you, sweet girl?" Sarah's grandmother. The one from the memory. "This isn't possible," I whispered. "The cardamom," the voice continued, growing stronger. "You remembered the cardamom, just like I taught you. You're not real, you're just a memory." A laugh, warm and terrible. "Oh, Emmy, everything is memory. And memories want to be remembered." The line went dead. I didn't go back to sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, watching the sun rise, trying to convince myself I'd imagined the phone call. But I could still smell cardamom in the air. I returned to Harbor Moon Antiques at exactly 10 a.m. when it opened. Margaret was waiting, looking like she hadn't slept either. "You got the call?" she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded, following her to the office. This time, I noticed things I'd missed before. Salt lines at the threshold, symbols carved into the doorframe, bundles of herbs hanging from the ceiling. "Protection," Margaret explained, seeing my gaze. "Though I'm not sure they do much good." "Tell me everything," I said. "No more fragments. I need to understand what's happening to me." She poured tea again, a different blend, something that smelled like pine and earth. "What do you know about collective memory?" "Nothing." Carl Jung wrote about the collective unconscious, the idea that all humans share certain memories and symbols. But what if he was only partially right? What if memories don't just exist in our minds, but in the space between minds? I thought of Sarah's memories flooding into me. Like a cloud storage for consciousness? Something like that. Now imagine someone figured out how to access that storage, to pull memories from one person and plant them in another. Why would anyone do that? Margaret's face darkened. Because memories shape identity. If I give you enough of someone else's memories, you start to become them. And if you become them, you die like them, I finished. The body follows the mind. Always has. She pulled out a photo album, flipping to a black and white picture. This was the shop in 1952. Look at the corner where you had your experience. The photo showed the same corner, but there was something different. A woman stood there facing away from the camera, her hand pressed against the wall. Who is she? We don't know. She appears in every photo of that corner since the shop opened. Always the same pose, always facing away. Margaret flipped through more photos. 1967, 1983, 1999, 2015. The woman was in all of them, unchanged. That's impossible. So is remembering someone else's life. But here we are. She closed the album. I've spent 30 years trying to understand. The closest I've come is this. That woman, whoever she was, left something in that corner. A fragment of herself that seeks new hosts. Hosts? She's trying to live again, through us, through our memories becoming hers and hers becoming ours until we can't tell the difference. I thought of Sarah Chen posting about dreams of falling, of David Reeves drowning in his bed. We die like the previous host, creating a chain. Each death adds another link, makes her stronger. Margaret pulled out a manila folder. But you're different, Emma. You're the first person to inherit memories from someone with your own name. Coincidence? No. Sarah Chen spent weeks in that corner before she found what she was looking for. She was drawn to that specific cookbook because it connected her to you. Your name, your eventual memories. She was looking for you without knowing it. My skin crawled. Why? Because you're not part of the chain. You're where it ends. She opened the folder, revealing newspaper clippings. Emma Thompson, 1952, the first recorded death connected to this shop, fell down the stairs of the building that used to be here. I stared at the grainy photo accompanying the article. The woman looked nothing like me, but something about her eyes. Every chain leads back to her, Margaret continued. Through different names, different faces, but always back to the original Emma, and now it's come full circle. So what do I do? How do I stop this? Margaret was quiet for a long moment, then, I don't know if you can. Everyone who's tried to break the chain has died, but you might have an advantage they didn't. What? You know what's happening, the others. They thought they were going crazy. They fought the memories, tried to maintain their own identity. But what if instead of fighting, you want me to embrace them? Become her? Not become. Understand, the woman in that corner, she's not trying to steal lives. She's trying to tell us something. Something that's been trapped in that space for 70 years. I stood abruptly. This is insane. Yes, but that doesn't make it less real. Margaret stood too, moving to a filing cabinet. I have something else to show you. Security footage from the night Sarah died. She pulled out a laptop, opening a video file. It showed the entrance to an apartment building. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. Watch, Margaret said. Sarah Chen appeared, walking normally. She reached the door, then stopped. Her head turned slowly, as if listening to someone. She nodded once, then she walked inside. The next camera showed the stairwell. Sarah climbed steadily until she reached the 4th floor. She stopped at the landing, turned to face the stairs, and stepped backward into empty air. She didn't trip, didn't fall. She stepped backward deliberately, arms spread wide like someone embracing a lover. The police never released this footage, Margaret said quietly. They couldn't explain it. I couldn't breathe. Sarah had chosen to fall, or something wearing Sarah's face had chosen. There's more, Margaret said. Every death in the chain. When we can find footage or witnesses, they all chose it, like they were completing something started long ago. The original, Emma's death, which may not have been an accident either. She closed the laptop. I've researched Emma Thompson extensively. She was unusual. People said she could know things she shouldn't, that she could smell emotions, taste memories, that she was born with gifts that frightened everyone, including herself. And she died in this building, in the basement, where the corner now stands. The building was renovated after her death, but that spot remembers. I rubbed my temples, fighting a growing headache. The smell of cardamom was getting stronger. I need to go back, I heard myself say, to the corner. Emma, no, not yet, you're not ready. But I was already moving, drawn by something stronger than fear. The main shop was empty of customers. Early morning light slanted through the dusty air. The corner waited. As I approached, the smell intensified. Not just cardamom now, but layers of scent. Rose and sandalwood, pipe tobacco, lavender, motor oil, all the scents mentioned in the journal, woven together like a tapestry of lives. I know you're here, I said to the empty air. Emma. The first Emma, what are you trying to tell us? The temperature dropped. My breath misted in the sudden cold. And then I wasn't in the shop anymore. I was in a basement. Old stone walls wept with moisture. A single bulb cast harsh shadows. And there was young Emma Thompson, my age or close to it, standing at the foot of wooden stairs. She was crying. They don't understand, she said, though not to me. To someone I couldn't see. The smells, the memories. They think I'm possessed. They want to have me committed. A man's voice, gentle but firm. Perhaps that would be best, Emma, until we understand what's happening to you. You mean until you can fix me, make me normal? She laughed bitterly. But what if I don't want to be fixed? What if this is what I'm supposed to be? Emma, please, come upstairs. We'll talk about this rationally. Rationally? She spun to face the stairs and I gasped. Her eyes were wild, yes, but also ancient, like she was seeing through time itself. I can smell your grandmother's death on you, Father. Pneumonia, 3 years from now. I can taste Mother's sadness, how it will drive her to the pills in 5 years. I know how everyone dies because I remember it. Past, present, future. It's all the same when you can smell time itself. You're frightening yourself with delusions. Am I? She pulled something from her pocket, a sprig of some herb. Do you know what this is? Cardamom. Grandmother's favorite. She's been dead for 10 years, but when I smell this, I remember being her. I remember being you. I remember being people who haven't been born yet. She crushed the cardamom between her fingers, and the scent exploded through the basement, through time, through the vision. If I die, she continued, backing toward the stairs, what happens to all these memories? Where do they go? Emma, don't. But she was already climbing backward up the stairs, eyes locked on something beyond her father, beyond the basement, beyond 1952. She was looking at me. They have to go somewhere, she said, speaking directly to me across 70 years. They have to be remembered. That's all we are in the end. Memories trying to find a home. She reached the top of the stairs, smiled sadly. I'm sorry, she said, for what's about to happen, for all of it. But this is the only way to save them. Save who? I shouted. But she was already falling, backward, arms spread wide, embracing the dark. The vision shattered. I was back in the shop, on my knees again, sobbing. Margaret's arms were around me, holding me steady. You saw her, she whispered. The original Emma. I nodded, unable to speak. What did she show you? I wiped my eyes, trying to form words around the truth. She didn't fall, she jumped. She was trying to save something, someone, the memories she carried. Margaret helped me stand. We need to get you out of here. The coroner's influence is strongest when... No, I pulled away. Don't you see? We've been wrong about everything. She's not trying to steal lives or live again. She's trying to preserve them, all those people whose memories she absorbed. She's trying to keep them from being forgotten. By killing their hosts. By completing the cycle. By making sure the memories return to where they began. I laughed, high and strange. She's not a ghost or a parasite. She's a library, a living archive of human experience, and we're the books. Margaret stared at me. Emma, you're not making sense. But I was. For the first time since this started, everything made perfect sense. The people who die, they don't disappear. They join her, become part of the collection. Sarah Chen isn't gone. She's here in this corner, waiting with all the others. That's not possible. Feel the air, I said. Really feel it. How many scents can you identify? Margaret closed her eyes, concentrating. When she opened them, her face was pale. Dozens, maybe more. Each one a life, a story, preserved forever in this space. I moved closer to the corner. She was born with a gift, or a curse. She could experience other people's memories through scent, but the weight of all those lives, it was killing her. So she found a way to anchor them, to create a place where memories could exist independent of their original owners. The corner. The corner, her final gift to the memories she'd collected. A home, a way to continue. I touched the wall, and warmth pulsed through my fingers. But it requires caretakers, people to tend the archive, to become part of it when their time comes. You're talking about dying. I'm talking about choosing. Every person in that chain chose Margaret. Not because they were compelled, but because they understood. The memories they carried were too precious to let fade. Margaret grabbed my arm. This is the influence talking. The corner is affecting your mind. Is it? Or am I just the first person to listen to what Emma's been trying to say all along? I pulled free gently. She's not a monster. She's a librarian, and I think I'm supposed to help her. Emma, please. But I was already walking back to the corner. The smells rose to meet me. A symphony of lives, each note distinct yet part of a greater whole. I need time, I said without turning. To understand. To decide. Decide what? I smiled, tasting cardamom and possibility. Whether I want to be a book or a librarian. I spent the next 3 days in research, not in the shop. Margaret had banned me until I came to my senses, but in libraries and archives, tracking down every person mentioned in her journal. What I found changed everything. David Reeves, who'd drowned in his bed after remembering Franklin's death. He'd been a historian specializing in World War II naval battles. Franklin, I discovered, had been a sailor whose experience in a U-boat attack had never been officially recorded. David's final paper, published posthumously, included details about that attack that historians said he couldn't have known. Details he'd remembered. Jennifer Wu had been an arson investigator. After her apartment fire, investigators found evidence that helped solve a string of suspicious fires from the 1960s. Fires that Mary, the woman whose memories Jennifer inherited, had witnessed but never reported. Thomas Mitchell was a traffic safety engineer. His accident led to the discovery of a design flaw in the road where Robert had died decades earlier. A flaw that had caused 17 other accidents over the years. Every death in the chain had revealed something, preserved something, solved something that had been lost to time. They weren't victims. They were messengers. I was sitting in my apartment surrounded by printouts and notes when the smell came again, stronger than ever. Cardamom mixed with something new, vanilla, and old roses. "Hello, Emma," I said to the empty room. The air shimmered, not quite a figure but a presence, a density of memory given almost form. "You understand now." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "What I've been trying to build. A memory palace. A literal one. Every life contains truth that shouldn't be lost, stories that need telling, injustices that need revealing." The presence shifted, and I caught a glimpse of her. The first Emma, young and desperate and brilliant. But I couldn't hold them all. I was breaking under the weight. So you created the corner. I created a system, a way for memories to pass from keeper to keeper, each one adding their own thread to the tapestry. She solidified a bit more, and I could see her sad smile. But people fear what they don't understand. They see death where I see transformation. The hosts? They really do choose? At the moment of understanding, yes. When they realize what they carry and why it matters. Sarah Chen chose because she understood that her memories of being you would complete a circle, would bring us here to this conversation. I stood, pacing to the window. Outside, Portland carried on, oblivious to the impossible conversation happening in my apartment. What happens if I say no? Then the chain continues differently. Someone else will smell the cardamom. Someone else will remember being Sarah, remembering being you. Eventually, the circle will close. And if I say yes, then you become what I've been. The central point. The librarian, as you so aptly put it. Her form flickered. But not alone, never alone. You'll have all of us. Every memory, every story, every life that's passed through the corner. Including yours. Especially mine. I'm tired, Emma. 70 years of holding this space open, of guiding the memories to their proper homes. I need someone to take over. Someone who understands that death isn't the end of the story. I turned from the window. Why me? Because you didn't run when you understood. Because you went looking for the truth instead of hiding from it. Because you have the same gift I did. The ability to truly experience another's memory, to honor it. The anxiety, the insomnia, the emotional porousness, side effects of a mind that's too open, that receives too much. But in the corner, that openness becomes strength, becomes purpose. I thought of Dr. Martinez telling me to try new experiences, of Sarah Chen, whose memories I now carried like precious cargo, of all the lives waiting in that corner, stories untold, truths unspoken. Will it hurt? Emma's smile was gentle. No more than you've already heard. The falling, it's not falling at all. It's letting go, releasing yourself into something larger. How long do I have to decide? The memories you carry will grow stronger over the next few days. Sarah's life will become clearer, more present. Eventually, you'll need to choose, integrate fully and join us, or find someone else to pass them to, creating another link in the chain. Or ending it, your choice, Emma. It's always been about choice. She began to fade, but I had one more question. The people who visit the shop, are they random? Nothing is random. They're drawn there because they have something to preserve or something to discover. The corner calls to those who need it. And Margaret has been protecting the space without understanding it. She thinks she's saving people from a curse. In reality, she's been our guardian, keeping the corner safe until the right person comes along. Me. If you choose. She was almost gone now, just a whisper of cardamom in the air. But know this, whatever you decide, you've already changed things. By understanding, by believing. The story is different now because you've heard it truly. The presence faded entirely, leaving me alone with the weight of impossible knowledge. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I wrote. Everything I'd learned, everything I'd experienced. If something happened to me, I wanted a record. A true record, not filtered through fear or misunderstanding. As dawn broke, my phone buzzed. Margaret. Something's happened. You need to come to the shop, now. I found her standing outside, the shop's windows dark. I can't go in, she said. The door won't open for me. It's never done this before. I tried the handle. It turned easily in my hand. It's choosing, I said. The corner knows. Knows what? That it's time for a change. I entered alone, Margaret waiting outside. The shop felt different, charged, expectant. Every object hummed with potential memory. The corner drew me like a magnet. As I approached, the scents rose in greeting. Cardamom, yes, but also every life that had passed through this space. David's pipe tobacco, Jennifer's lavender, Thomas's motor oil, Sarah's cinnamon, and underneath it all, Emma's roses. I understand, I said, but I have a condition. The air listened. No more deaths that look like accidents. If someone chooses to join the archive, it happens here, in the corner, peacefully, surrounded by the memories they've chosen to preserve. Warmth pulsed through the space. Agreement. And Margaret needs to know the truth. All of it. She's earned that. Another pulse. Acceptance. I pressed my hand against the wall, and the visions came. Not just Sarah's memories now, but echoes of everyone. Franklin's war, Mary's fires, Robert's crash. Lives upon lives, each one a thread in an infinite tapestry. But I also saw the future, or a possible future. The corner becoming known not as a curse, but as a sanctuary. People coming to share memories of loved ones. Historians discovering truths long buried. Families finding closure in preserved moments. A library of human experience, tended with love instead of fear. Yes, I whispered. I choose. The falling sensation began immediately, but Emma had been right. It wasn't falling, it was expanding, opening, becoming large enough to hold multitudes. I felt Sarah's memories settle fully into place, no longer foreign but part of my own story. Behind her, all the others waited, patient, eager to be known. "Emma!" Margaret's voice from the doorway. She'd felt the change, forced her way in. "It's okay," I said, turning to her. "I need you to write this down. Everything I'm about to tell you, the real story of the corner." "What's happening to you?" I looked at my hands. They seemed more translucent, as if I was becoming less solid and more distributed. "I'm becoming the librarian," I said. "Someone has to tend the memories. Keep them safe. Emma, please." Margaret stepped closer, her voice breaking. "You don't have to do this. We can find another way." But I was already changing. The corner's influence flowed through me like warm honey, and with it came understanding that went deeper than words. I could feel every story waiting to be told, every memory yearning to be preserved. "Write this down," I said, my voice gaining an echo that hadn't been there moments before. "The corner isn't cursed, it's consecrated, a place where human experience becomes eternal." Margaret pulled out her journal with shaking hands. "I'm listening. The people who come here, they're not victims. They're volunteers. On some level, they've always known they carry something precious, something that needs to survive beyond their individual lives." As I spoke, the air around me shimmered with presence. Sarah Chen materialized beside me, translucent but smiling. Then David Reeves, Jennifer Wu, Thomas Mitchell, all of them, every link in the chain, standing in the corner like a congregation of memory. "They're all here," I whispered. "They've been waiting." Margaret's pen moved frantically across the page. Waiting for what? For someone to understand? For the archive to be complete? I felt the first Emma's presence strongest of all, her relief washing over me like a tide. She's been holding this space open for 70 years, Margaret. She's so tired. The original Emma stepped forward, her form solidifying as mine grew more ethereal. "Thank you," she said, her voice carrying the weight of decades. "For hearing, for choosing, for understanding that some things are worth preserving." I nodded, feeling the last of my physical form dissolve into something larger. More encompassing, the corner expanded around me, through me, until I was the corner and it was me. Every book on every shelf held whispers of lives lived. Every scent carried stories that mattered. "What happens now?" Margaret asked, though she was speaking to the air now. To all of us. "Now," I said, my voice coming from everywhere and nowhere, "we do what we've always done. We remember. We preserve. We honor the stories that shaped us." Sarah Chen stepped forward, her form gaining substance as mine had lost it. "But differently now. Emma understands what we're building. She'll guide the process with intention instead of instinct. People will still come," I explained to Margaret. "They'll still smell the scents that call to them. But now they'll have a choice made in full knowledge. And those who choose to join us will do so here, peacefully, surrounded by understanding." Margaret looked around the transformed space. The corner had expanded somehow, becoming a proper room within a room. Books lined impossible shelves that stretched into shadow. The air itself seemed to pulse with contained stories. "What about the ones who don't choose?" she asked. "They'll carry their borrowed memories back into the world," I said. "They'll solve old mysteries, right old wrongs, tell stories that need telling. The archive serves both those who stay and those who leave." David Reeves materialized more fully. "I helped naval historians understand a battle they'd never fully grasped. Jennifer exposed a serial arsonist. Thomas saved lives with his traffic safety insights. The memories find their purpose. And now?" Margaret's voice was steadier now, accepting. "Now you become the guardian," I said. "The one who helps people understand their choice, who explains what they're experiencing instead of fearing it." "I don't know if I can." "You've been doing it for 30 years, Sarah said gently. "You just didn't know why." Margaret closed her journal and looked around the room. "What do I tell people? How do I explain this?" "Start with the truth," I said. "That memories are sacred. That some experiences are too important to let fade. That this corner is a place where human stories come to be preserved. And if they don't believe me, then they're not ready. But for those who are, for those who smell something familiar in the air and remember things they've never lived, they'll understand." Margaret nodded slowly. "The journal, I should burn it, start fresh." "No," I said, "keep it, add to it, but change the narrative. We're not a cautionary tale about supernatural predators. We're a love story about human memory refusing to be forgotten." She smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "A library of souls." "Exactly." As Margaret moved toward the door, she paused. "Emma, will I see you again?" "Every time you smell cardamom," I said. "Every time someone needs to understand what we're offering, I'll be here." She left then, but not in fear, in acceptance, in understanding. The corner settled into its new configuration, and I felt the presence of everyone who'd ever contributed to this collection. Their memories were my memories now. Their stories were my stories, but I was still me, still Emma, just more. Days passed, weeks. People came, drawn by scents that called to them. Some simply browsed and left, carrying borrowed memories back into the world. Others lingered, understanding growing in their eyes. A few chose to stay. Each choice was made in full knowledge. Each addition to the archive was celebrated rather than mourned. The corner grew, accommodating new stories, new experiences, new threads in the endless tapestry of human memory. Margaret became our translator, helping visitors understand what they were experiencing. She rewrote the journal entirely, turning it into a guide rather than a warning. She trained volunteers to help, people who'd experienced borrowed memories and chosen to serve the archive while remaining in the world. The shop became known as a place of healing, where people came to process loss, to understand family mysteries, to connect with stories that needed telling. The corner remained our sanctuary, but the entire space served the greater purpose now. And I remained at the center of it all, the librarian Emma had trained me to be, tending the memories, ensuring each story found its proper place, helping the living understand the persistence of human experience. Sometimes, late at night when the shop was closed, I would materialize fully enough to browse the books, to run my fingers along the spines that held so many stories. Sarah would join me, and David, and all the others. We would share memories like old friends sharing photographs. "Do you miss it?" Sarah asked one night. "Being singular?" I considered the question. I miss the simplicity sometimes, but I don't miss the loneliness. I was always carrying other people's feelings, other people's pain. Now I understand why. Because you were preparing for this. Because I was always meant to be a vessel. I just didn't know for what. Margaret grew older, trained successors, ensured the archive would continue. When her time came, she chose to join us, adding her 30 years of guardianship to our collection. Her memories of protection and service became part of the foundation we built upon. The corner became a place of pilgrimage for those who understood. Historians researching family mysteries, therapists helping clients process inherited trauma, writers seeking authentic detail for their stories. Each visitor added something, even if they didn't stay. And through it all, I remained the librarian, the keeper of stories, the guardian of human memory in all its complexity. I had found my purpose at last, not in anxiety or insomnia or emotional porousness, but in service to something larger than myself, in ensuring that no story truly dies, that no experience is completely lost. The corner smells of cardamom still, and roses, and pipe tobacco, and all the scents that carry human memory forward into eternity. If you ever find yourself in Portland, Maine, and you catch a scent that makes you homesick for a place you've never been, follow it. Find the corner. Breathe deeply. And remember, we'll be waiting. Now I need to know, what scent would trigger memories you've never had? What smell would make you remember a life that wasn't yours? And whose story would you be willing to preserve forever? Comment below. Some memories are too important to let fade into silence. Story number 3. They say animals know things we don't. That they can sense earthquakes before they happen, hurricanes before they form, and sometimes things that shouldn't exist at all. My grandmother used to tell me that when the deer stand up on their hind legs at night, it means they've seen something that made them forget their prey animals, something that made them want to look bigger, taller, more human. I never believed her, not until last October, when I moved to Cedar Falls, Montana, and learned that some old stories aren't stories at all. But wait, before I tell you what happened, I need you to promise me something. Promise you'll listen to the whole thing, because if you stop halfway through, you might miss the warning signs. And trust me, you're going to need to know what to look for. Hit that subscribe button now, because after you hear this, you're going to have questions. Questions I can only answer in the comments below. All right, here's where the story really begins. The house came to me through my Uncle Pete's will. I barely knew the man, just remembered him as the weird relative who showed up to family gatherings smelling like pine needles and gun oil. He'd lived alone in Cedar Falls for 40 years, in a cabin his own father had built back in the 50s. When the lawyer called to tell me I'd inherited the place, I thought it was a joke. "Mr. Walker, your uncle was very specific," the lawyer had said over the phone. "The property goes to you, along with all its contents and responsibilities." That word stuck with me. Responsibilities. What kind of responsibilities come with a cabin in the woods? I drove up from Denver on a Thursday afternoon, watching the city fade into foothills, then mountains, then the endless stretch of Montana wilderness. Cedar Falls was one of those towns you'd miss if you blinked. Just a gas station, a general store, and maybe 200 people who'd chosen isolation over convenience. The cabin sat 5 miles outside town, at the end of a dirt road that my Toyota Corolla definitely wasn't built for. But when I finally pulled up to it, I had to admit it was beautiful. Hand-hewn logs fitted together like a puzzle, a wraparound porch that overlooked a meadow, and beyond that, miles of untouched forest. I grabbed my bags and climbed the porch steps, noting how they didn't creak despite their age. The key was under a rock shaped like a turtle, exactly where the lawyer said it would be. The door opened smoothly, revealing an interior that was surprisingly well maintained. Everything was clean, organized, like Uncle Pete had just stepped out for groceries. That's when I noticed the notebook on the kitchen table. My name was written on the cover in shaky handwriting. David, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're here. I'm sorry to leave you with this burden, but someone needs to know, someone needs to watch. The pages that followed were filled with dates, times, and observations, all about deer. But not normal observations, not the kind a hunter would make. These were different. October 3rd, 2019, 11:47 p.m., 3 does standing upright near the salt lick. Stayed that way for 7 minutes. No wind, no predators visible. November 18th, 2020, 2:33 a.m. Buck on hind legs by the tree line. Appeared to be looking at something in the sky. Checked, no planes, no satellites visible. December 24th, 2021, midnight exactly. Entire herd standing. Counted 14, all facing the same direction, northwest, toward the old Hartley property. Page after page of this. Years of it, and at the bottom of the last entry, dated just a week before he died. Uncle Pete had written, "They know I'm watching." Last night, one of them looked directly at my window. It saw me, and it smiled. Deer don't smile, David. Remember that. Deer don't smile. I set the notebook down, feeling a chill despite the warm October afternoon. Outside, the meadow was peaceful. A few normal deer grazed in the distance, heads down, doing regular deer things. I laughed at myself. Uncle Pete had clearly lost it toward the end. Isolation does that to people. Makes them see patterns where there aren't any, assign meaning to random animal behavior. I spent the rest of the day unpacking, setting up my laptop, trying to get cell service. The cabin had a landline at least, and surprisingly good internet. I could work remotely from here, write my articles, live cheap while I figured out what to do with the property. By the time the sun started setting, I'd almost forgotten about the notebook. I was heating up a can of soup when I heard it. A sound like footsteps, heavy ones, on the porch. I froze, listening. The footsteps circled the cabin slowly, deliberately. Too heavy for a person, unless it was someone massive, a bear maybe? But bears don't walk that rhythmically. I crept to the window, peered through the curtain, and felt my blood turn to ice. A deer was walking around my porch. Walking, on its hind legs. Its front hooves hung at its sides like arms, and its head was tilted at an angle that made my neck hurt just looking at it. It moved with a terrible grace, like something pretending to be human but not quite getting it right. As I watched, it stopped at the front door. Stood there, and then, I swear to God, it knocked. 3 times, slow and deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. I held my breath, praying it would leave. The doorknob rattled, just once. Testing. Then, silence. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, waiting. Finally, I found the courage to look out the window again. The porch was empty. In the meadow, deer grazed normally, on all 4s, like nothing had happened. That night, I read Uncle Pete's notebook cover to cover. Sleep didn't come easy. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow at the window sent my heart racing. But exhaustion won eventually, and I dozed off around 3 a.m. The notebook still open on my chest. I woke to sunlight and the sound of a car engine. Through the window, I saw a pickup truck pulling up to the cabin. An older woman climbed out, carrying a covered dish. I opened the door before she could knock, probably looking like hell after my sleepless night. "You must be David," she said, studying me with sharp blue eyes. "I'm Martha Henley, live about 2 miles down the road. Thought you might appreciate a hot meal. Moving in and all." The normalcy of it, a neighbor with a casserole, almost made me laugh. I invited her in, made coffee, and tried to act like I hadn't seen a deer walk upright 12 hours earlier. "Your uncle was a good man," Martha said, settling into a kitchen chair like she'd done it 100 times. Bit odd toward the end, but good. He helped me out more times than I can count. "Did he ever—" I started, then stopped. How do you ask someone if your dead uncle was crazy? "Did he ever mention the deer?" Martha finished for me. I looked at her sharply. She was staring into her coffee cup, face carefully neutral. "You've seen them too," I said. Not a question. She nodded slowly. "Most folks around here have. We just don't talk about it. Talking about it makes it real. And if it's real, well..." She looked up at me then. "Your uncle was the only one who tried to understand it. Documented everything. Looked for patterns. And did he find any?" Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then, "They stand up more often in October. Always have. Far back as anyone can remember. And they're always looking northwest, toward the Hartley property." "What's at the Hartley property?" "Nothing now. Hasn't been for 30 years. But back in the 90s, she paused, seemed to wrestle with something. "There was an incident. The Hartleys had a daughter, Rebecca. Sweet girl. She went missing one October, right around this time actually. Search parties combed the woods for weeks, never found her." "That's terrible. But what does it have to do with—" "They found her tracks," Martha interrupted. "Going into the woods. But after a certain point, they changed. Started walking on 2 legs instead of running on all 4s, like she just stood up and walked away." The coffee cup shook in my hand. "That's not possible. Lot of things aren't possible. Doesn't stop them from happening." Martha stood, brushed imaginary crumbs from her lap. "Your uncle had a theory. Said maybe the deer weren't standing up at all. Said maybe they were something else, trying to remember how to be deer, and sometimes they forget." She left after that, but not before pressing a piece of paper into my hand. A phone number. "That's Jim Garrett, the sheriff. If you see anything unusual, you call him. Don't try to handle it yourself. Your uncle made that mistake." After she left, I spent hours going through the cabin more carefully. In Uncle Pete's bedroom closet, I found more notebooks, dozens of them, going back 20 years. But these weren't just observations. They were investigations. He'd mapped every sighting, calculated distances, times, weather patterns. He'd interviewed locals, collected old newspapers, even took photographs. Most were blurry, taken at night through windows, but a few were clear enough to make my skin crawl. Deer standing in circles. Deer with their heads tilted at impossible angles. And in one, dated just last year, a deer standing at the edge of the forest. Arms spread wide like it was welcoming something, or someone. That afternoon, I drove into town, needed supplies, but mostly needed to be around people. Normal people doing normal things. The general store was run by a man named Carl, friendly enough until I mentioned I was Pete Walker's nephew. "Staying out at the cabin then?" he asked, something shifting in his expression. "For a while, yeah." He leaned across the counter, lowered his voice. word of advice, nephew of Pete or not, don't go walking in the woods at night, and if you see them standing—" He glanced around, like someone might be listening. "Just go inside, lock your doors, wait for morning." "What happens if you don't?" Carl straightened up, busied himself with the register. "No one knows. That's the point. No one who didn't listen is around to tell us." I bought my supplies and left, but his words followed me home. That evening, as the sun set, I found myself watching the meadow, waiting. The deer came as they always did, grazing peacefully, normal, natural, until they weren't. It started with one doe near the tree line. She stopped eating, raised her head, and slowly, impossibly, rose onto her hind legs, then another, and another. Within minutes, 7 deer stood upright in my meadow, all facing northwest, all perfectly still. I grabbed Uncle Pete's camera, an old digital thing, and started taking pictures. The deer didn't move, didn't acknowledge me, just stood there, watching something I couldn't see. That's when I noticed the 8th figure. It stood among them, similar height, similar stance, but even in the fading light, I could tell it wasn't a deer. The proportions were wrong. The way it moved its head, too smooth, too human. I zoomed in with the camera, tried to focus, and that's when it turned. Rebecca Hartley's missing poster had been in one of Uncle Pete's notebooks. 30 years old. Faded. But I recognized the face, the same face that was now looking directly at my camera, smiling. I stumbled backward, dropped the camera. When I looked again, the meadow was empty. All of them gone, like they'd never been there at all. But the pictures remained. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face. Rebecca Hartley, missing for 30 years, standing in my meadow like she'd never left. But she hadn't aged, hadn't changed, except for her eyes. In the photo, when I zoomed in close enough, her eyes reflected light like an animal's. The next morning, I called Sheriff Garrett. He arrived within an hour, a solid man in his 60s with the kind of calm that comes from seeing too much. I showed him the photos, watched his face carefully. He didn't seem surprised. "Your uncle showed me similar pictures," he said finally. "Been showing them to me for years. Problem is, what am I supposed to do with them? Can't arrest a deer for standing up. Can't investigate a missing person who's been gone 3 decades. But it's her. It's Rebecca Hartley. Is it?" He handed the camera back. "Look again, really look." I did. The face was right, the hair, the general shape. But the longer I stared, the more wrong it seemed. Like someone had tried to draw Rebecca from memory and got the details just slightly off. "Your uncle had a theory about that too," Garrett continued. "Said maybe they weren't the missing people at all. Said maybe they were echoes, copies, something trying on human shapes like clothes. They?" He sighed, rubbed his face. "There have been others, over the years. Not many. Maybe one every decade or so, always in October, always near the Hartley property. They go missing, and then sometimes people see them, standing with the deer. Why didn't anyone do something? Why keep it secret? What would you have us do?" His voice was tired. "Call in the National Guard? Tell them we've got deer that walk upright and missing people who aren't missing? This town survives on tourism, hunting season. Something like this gets out." He shook his head. "Besides, they've never hurt anyone. Not directly. What about the missing people? Who says they didn't go willingly?" That thought chilled me more than anything else. The idea that people might choose, whatever this was, might walk into the woods and simply change. After Garrett left, I couldn't stand being in the cabin. Drove into town, parked at the small library. The librarian, a young woman named Sarah, seemed surprised to have a visitor. "Looking for anything in particular?" she asked. "Local history, specifically about the Hartley property, and any unusual events." Her smile faltered slightly. "You're Pete Walker's nephew. I heard you were in town." News traveled fast in Cedar Falls. Sarah led me to a small section of local archives. Newspapers, yearbooks, property records. "Most of this hasn't been digitized," she said. "Budget cuts. But it's all here if you're willing to dig." I was. Hours passed. The Hartley property had a long history, stretching back to the town's founding in 1892. Normal stuff mostly. Births, deaths, property transfers. But there were patterns if you looked for them. October 1923. Local boy Thomas Garrett, Sheriff Garrett's great-uncle, disappeared while hunting. October 1951. Mary Campbell. School teacher. Vanished walking home from town. October 1974. 3 members of the Jacobson family gone in a single night. October 1993. Rebecca Hartley. Always October. Always near that property. And in the newspaper accounts, always the same detail buried in the back pages. Deer acting strangely, standing upright, watching. "Find what you're looking for?" I jumped. Sarah stood behind me, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Sorry, thought you might need caffeine. You've been at it for 4 hours." 4 hours? I checked my phone. She was right. The afternoon had disappeared. "Thanks." I accepted the coffee gratefully. "Hey, can I ask you something about the deer?" She tensed. "What about them? Do you ever see them standing?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat down across from me. "My grandmother saw them once, back in '74, the night the Jacobsons disappeared. She was walking home from a church social, took the shortcut past the Hartley property. Said she saw dozens of them, all standing, all watching the house. What did she do? Ran. Didn't stop until she was home with the doors locked. Next morning, the Jacobsons were gone. Their car was still there. Breakfast still on the table, just gone. Did she tell anyone? Who would believe her? Deer don't stand up. People don't just vanish." Sarah stood, collected the empty cups. "But you know what the really strange part was? She said one of them waved at her, just raised its hoof and waved, like it was saying hello, or goodbye." I left the library as the sun was setting, drove back to the cabin with my head full of dates and names and impossible things. The meadow was empty when I arrived, no deer at all. Somehow, that was worse. Inside, I spread out my notes, drew connections, tried to make sense of it. The disappearances came in cycles, roughly every 20 years. But the deer sightings, those were constant, increasing, like something was building. The phone rang, sharp in the quiet cabin. The landline. I picked it up. "Hello?" Breathing, slow, deliberate. "Hello? Who is this? You should leave." The voice was wrong, too low, too wet, like someone talking through water. He couldn't leave, stayed too long, saw too much. "But you can still leave. Who is this? What did you do to my uncle?" "We didn't do anything. He did it to himself, watching. Always watching, making notes, taking pictures. He wanted to understand. But understanding changes you." The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, when movement outside caught my eye. In the meadow, illuminated by the moon, a figure stood on 2 legs. Not a deer, not human, something between. It raised one arm, held it there, and I realized with growing horror what it was doing. It was waving. That night, I broke, packed my bags, threw them in the car, decided I was done. Whatever was happening in Cedar Falls, it wasn't my problem. I'd sell the cabin, go back to Denver, pretend none of this ever happened, but the car wouldn't start. I turned the key again. Nothing. Not even a click. The battery was fine. Had just replaced it 6 months ago. I popped the hood. Everything looked normal. But the engine stayed dead. That's when I heard them. Footsteps, all around the cabin, that same rhythmic walking, but multiplied. Dozens of them, walking in circles. I ran back inside, locked the door, grabbed the phone to call Sheriff Garrett. No dial tone. I tried my cell. No signal. The internet, dead, cut off. Through the windows I could see them. Deer, standing upright. Surrounding the cabin, but among them, other figures, human-shaped but wrong. I recognized some from the missing persons reports. Thomas Garrett from 1923, still wearing his hunting vest. Mary Campbell. Her teacher's dress faded but intact. The Jacobsons, all three, standing hand in hand in hand, and Rebecca Hartley, standing closest to the window, smiling that too-wide smile. She tapped on the glass. Once. Twice. Then pressed something against it, a piece of paper, in shaky handwriting, like someone learning to write, 2 words, "Join us." I backed away, stumbled into Uncle Pete's study. His final notebook was still on the desk, open to the last entry, but there was more writing now. Fresh ink. My uncle's handwriting, but wrong. Shaky. Desperate. "David, if you're reading this, they've made me write it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought I could resist. Thought understanding would protect me. But the more you understand, the more you see, the harder it becomes to look away. They're beautiful, David. Once you really see them, not deer, not human, something older, something that was here before either. They don't take people. People go to them. Walk into the woods and shed their human shape like old clothes, become something else, something that doesn't worry about bills or heartbreak or death, something that just is. I fought it for so long, documented everything, tried to warn people, but every night they called to me, showed me what I could become, and last night I finally understood. The deer aren't standing up, David. We're the ones who've been walking wrong all along. The writing ended there, but below it, in that same wet voice from the phone, new words appeared as I watched, ink bleeding onto the page from nowhere. He's with us now, happy, free. You could be too. A knock at the door, loud, insistent, but not threatening, almost polite. I knew I shouldn't. Every instinct screamed at me to hide, to wait for dawn. But something drew me forward, some terrible curiosity. I needed to see, needed to know. I opened the door. Uncle Pete stood on my porch. But not the Uncle Pete from family photos. This Pete stood 7 feet tall on legs that bent in too many places. His face was still recognizable, but stretched. His eyes reflected the moonlight like mirrors. "Hello, David," he said, and his voice was almost normal. Almost. "I've been waiting for you." "Uncle Pete, what happened to you?" I understood. He tilted his head, that horrible, deer-like angle. 40 years I watched them. 40 years I wondered. And then one night, they showed me. We're the anomaly, David. Humans. Walking upright, thinking we're separate from nature, but we're not. We're just animals that forgot how to be animals. This is insane. Is it? He gestured to the others. Look at them. Really look. What do you see? I looked, and for just a moment, I saw what he meant. They weren't monsters. They were free. No human worries etched on their faces. No fear, no anxiety, just existence. Pure and simple. "The Hartley property," I said, fighting to keep my thoughts clear. "What is it?" "A door. A place where the old world touches this one. Where we can remember what we were before we invented words like human and animal. Before we built walls between ourselves and the wild. And October? The veil thins. The door opens wider. Some years, people are ready to walk through. Some years, they're not." He stepped closer. "But you're ready, David. I can see it. You've always felt it, haven't you? That sense that you don't quite fit. That civilization is a costume that chafes. He wasn't wrong. That was the terrible thing. Some part of me, some deep, primal part, wanted to follow, to shed this human shape and become something simpler, something that didn't have to worry about mortgage payments and failed relationships and the crushing weight of modern life. All you have to do," Uncle Pete continued, "is walk with us. Just walk. The change happens naturally, painlessly, and then forever. No aging, no death, just the forest and the moon and the eternal dance of predator and prey." I took a step forward, then another. The others parted, making a path. Rebecca held out her hand, fingers too long but somehow graceful. Behind them, the forest beckoned, dark, ancient, home. But then I saw it, in Uncle Pete's eyes, just for a second. Fear. Deep, desperate fear, like something trapped behind glass, screaming to get out. "No," I said, and the word felt like lifting a mountain. "No." Uncle Pete's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Relief? Disappointment? Both? "Then you'll stay," he said, "and watch and document, like I did, like someone always has. The town needs a watcher, someone to warn the ones who might wander too close, someone to count the standing deer and mark the calendar and pretend they're not slowly going mad from the wanting. I'll leave, no." His voice was firm, final. "You've seen too much, know too much. The town won't let you leave, your car won't start, the roads will turn you around. You'll always end up back here." He smiled, sad and terrible. "It's not a curse, it's a job. Someone has to remember what the deer really are. Someone has to keep the secret. Now it's your turn." They left then. Walked back into the forest, some on two legs, some dropping to all fours, natural as breathing. I watched until the last of them disappeared into the trees. The sun rose an hour later. My car started immediately, but Uncle Pete was right. Every time I tried to leave Cedar Falls, something went wrong. Road construction, engine trouble. Once, a massive elk herd that blocked the highway for hours. The town kept me, held me, made me its new watcher. So here I am, writing this from the cabin, October again. I've seen them 17 times now, counted them, documented them, sent warnings to hikers who ventured too close to the Hartley property, kept the secret, kept the balance, but every time they stand, every time they wave, the wanting grows stronger. The human world feels heavier. The forest looks more inviting. I know what you're thinking. Why share this now? Why tell the story? Because I saw something last night that changed everything. Something Uncle Pete never documented, never saw. The deer aren't just standing anymore. They're teaching their young to walk. So, if you're listening to this, if you're lying in bed wondering if it's just a story, do me a favor. Pay attention to the deer in your area. Watch them when they think no one's looking. And if you see one stand, if you see one wave, don't investigate. Don't document. Don't try to understand. Just run. Because once you start watching them, they start watching you. And once they start watching you, it's only a matter of time before you realize the terrible truth. We're the ones who've been walking wrong all along. Sweet dreams. And don't forget to subscribe. Leave a comment below if you've ever seen something in the woods that shouldn't exist. I read every single one from my cabin, where I wait and watch and count the days until October comes again. The deer are standing right now, all 17 of them, watching my window, waiting. I think tonight I'll finally open the door.